Hello. Happy Friday. I'm Miss Carla, and we're going to keep reading our second chapter book in the Rhode Island Latino Books Month nominee list for 2020 for grades 3 through 5. This is called Lety Out Loud, and it's by Angela Cervantes. I'm going to go ahead and take the jacket off like I did last time so it doesn't get wrinkled up while I'm holding the book. I'm just going to give a quick reminder that I want to, that Latino Books Month is a project of Rhode Island Latino Arts, and we would like to thank the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, the Providence Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism, and the Rhode Island Foundation for their support to RILA and for the arts community. Yesterday I found a cute bookmark. Have you ever used these kinds of bookmarks? It's a magnet, and it folds in half. And when you put it over a page or two, it sort of snaps closed like a little clip, but it doesn't do any damage to the paper. It's fairly thin, so it can fit in the book pretty well. It's just cardboard with a little magnet on each side. And this one has, do you know this character? Maybe from when you were younger? This is one of the wild things from Where the Wild Things Are. Remember Max dresses in his wolf costume and he goes to where the wild things are? He's got his little horns, kind of blurry. And on the back, it's the back of the wild thing. Isn't that cute? So I'm going to use this bookmark from now on for our book to keep our spot. All right, let's start on chapter 3, Big Shoes to Fill. As Hunter stepped away with a smug smile, Lety stood there confused, trying to understand what he meant by missing the boat. What did a boat have to do with being a shelter scribe? What boat? Lety asked Kennedy and Brisa. It's a stupid expression, Kennedy said. Forget about him. Lety frowned. She felt like she was back in 3rd grade, clueless about English and not understanding anything again. She glanced over at Hunter, who was talking to Mario Perez, another kid she knew from her school. She thought he was nice. Too nice to be hanging around Hunter. Maybe you should change your name to Hunter Fisher if you love boats so much, Brisa shouted, stopping Hunter and Mario mid-conversation. Hunter glared at her. Nicely done, Alma said, giving Brisa a fist bump. As frustrated as Lety felt, she couldn't help but laugh at Brisa's bold comeback. Hunter Fisher, Lety chuckled, because he likes boats. Soon all the girls were cracking up. A spark of hope warmed Lety. 5 minutes ago, she didn't know what a shelter scribe was, but now that the possibility of being shelter scribe had opened itself up to her, she wanted to prove to everyone she could do it. It was like the time in 4th grade when she found Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim at the school library. The ELLs mostly read picture books, but she wanted a book from the 4th grade bookshelf. She pulled it from the shelf and regretted it immediately. The thickness of the novel made her feel like her head would explode, but once she had it in her hands, she didn't dare put it down. Plus, a few of her classmates were watching her. As she flipped open the book and browsed through the pages, she spotted black and white sketches of a tiny mouse, a crow, and super-sized rats mixed in with the story. Books with pictures were always a big help to her, and yet this book wasn't for babies. It was perfect. The librarian didn't even question Lety about the reading level. She let Lety check it out and keep it for as long as she needed. When she was done, she decided it was her all-time favorite book. Now, every book in the school library was a friend to her. When she opened them, the words no longer intimidated her. Instead, they transported her to new worlds where lab rats could become heroes and girls from faraway places, like her, could dream in a new language. Lety raised the marker again, stepped toward the paper, and wrote her name directly beneath Hunter's name. "She can't do that," Hunter whined. "Come here, you two," Alma said with a roll of her eyes. Hunter and Lety shuffled toward Alma until they were in front of her. "Look, I'm happy to announce that we now have 2 shelter scribes. Isn't it exciting?" Alma clasped her hands. Hunter's face twisted. "You are going to work together." "Ugh," Hunter grunted, interrupting Alma. "Don't be rude, Hunter," Kennedy hissed. Lety felt like she'd just been tripped. What was Hunter's problem? "Anyway," Alma continued, "together you'll both write 10 profiles. And no pressure, but you should realize that you have big shoes to fill." Lety looked down at her sandals, confused. Hunter caught her doing it and scoffed. "Our last shelter scribe, Gabby, was like J.K. Rowling, okay?" Alma continued. "She wrote fast and every story was pure gold. As soon as Gabby created a profile for a furry friend, it was adopted within days." "Not even days, hours," another volunteer chimed in. Alma nodded. "He's right. I already read and write at a high school level, so it's no problem," Hunter bragged. "You do not," Kennedy said, shaking her head. "Stop lying, Hunter." "It's true," Mario jumped in. "Our teacher said so. You guys aren't in Mrs. Morgan's class, so you don't know." "Stop taking his side, Mario," Kennedy snapped. Lety swallowed hard as a wave of worry swept over her. Could Hunter really write at the high school level? She looked at Alma, who seemed to be enjoying the fireworks between Kennedy and Mario. "Alma, how do we know which animals to write for?" Lety asked. "I'll get a list from Dr. V. I'll have it tomorrow for you guys, okay?" Alma turned to leave. Once she was out of earshot, Hunter adjusted his baseball cap and stepped closer to Lety. "I think you should just let me write all the profiles. I mean, I can get them done fast, and they'll be awesome." Hunter shrugged. "Plus, I know you're still learning English. It might be too hard for you." Brisa put her arm protectively around Lety's shoulders. "You heard Alma. She said there are 2 shelter scribes," Brisa said. "Not 1, 2. Dose." Hunter shook his head. "I just want to do what's best for the animals." "Oh, you just want to do what's best for the animals? How sweet," Kennedy mocked. "Give me a break." She rolled her eyes. "I have an idea," Mario exclaimed. "We can have a contest." Lety's stomach twisted into a knot. "I like it," Hunter said. "We can prove who the best shelter scribe is." "That's dumb," Kennedy said. "It's not about proving who's the best writer. It's about the animals," Mario said in a calm, low voice. "If you really cared about the animals here at the shelter, wouldn't you want them to be adopted as soon as possible, Lety?" "Of course I do," she said softly. "Then shouldn't the animals have the best person writing for them? The contest is the fairest way to find out who should be shelter scribe. You heard what Alma said. The last shelter scribe was like J.K. Rowling and—" "So what?" Kennedy interrupted. "They're writing animal profiles, not playing a game of Quidditch, Mario." Mario palm-slapped his face in frustration. "Kennedy, you're driving me nuts. If you'd listen for a minute, you'd see that my point is that the best writer should be shelter scribe. We need an easy and fair way to determine who that is." Lety took a deep breath to suck in the words and process everything Mario was saying. The best writer? Easy and fair? None of it seemed fair to her. She wondered why Hunter and Mario were making this so complicated. Then the answer came to her. It was like everything back in school. The other kids, the non-ELLs, never invited them to birthday parties or to participate in their group projects. This contest felt like another way to exclude her. It made her angry. "Fine," Lety said, with more attitude than she wanted. "Who'll decide on the best shelter scribe? Dr. Villalobos? Alma?" No, we can't tell them anything, Mario said. He stepped closer to the group and lowered his voice. Listen, I heard from one of the other volunteers that their former shelter scribe, Gabby, got in trouble and wasn't allowed to play with the dogs and cats again. Dr. Villalobos almost kicked her out of the shelter. Kicked out? Letty asked. I can't get kicked out. My grandma will flip her lid, Hunter said. But Alma said Gabby was awesome, Risa added. Hey, that's what I heard. Anyway, we don't want that to happen, right? If Dr. V could do that to the last shelter scribe, I mean, he could kick us out of camp, too, for making this a contest. We have to agree to keep it just between us, okay? Hunter said. Letty nodded. The winner will be based on adoptions, Mario said. Alma said that she needed 10 profiles. That means you guys each write 5. She also said that as soon as you have them done, the social media team will post them online. I'm signed up for that. I'll make sure they go up as fast as lightning. Whoever has more dogs or cats adopted from the 5 by the end of week 2 is our shelter scribe. The loser has to do something else, like volunteer in the pantry. Mario gestured toward the food pantry hero sign taped up on the wall. There wasn't a single name on it. No one has signed up, so they'll want the help. That's because it smells, Kennedy said, like you guys. Do we have a deal or not? Mario said, ignoring Kennedy's insults. 5 profiles? Letty asked. Mario and Hunter nodded. Letty wanted more than anything to help dogs like Spike and all the rest of the animals find forever families, but 5 profiles in 2 weeks seemed impossible. As if sensing Letty's anxiety, Kennedy blazed her light blue eyes on Mario. Hold your horses. You don't get to make up all the rules, she said. I think we should make this more of a challenge for Hunter, since he claims that he writes at the high school level. Fine with me, Hunter said. What do you have in mind? Mario asked. We'll give you 5 words that you have to use for the profiles, Kennedy said. This will make it more fair since you're so advanced, or whatever. Letty pulled Kennedy's elbow to whisper into her ear. Kennedy, I don't know if we should. Trust me, Letty. She trusted Kennedy with her whole heart, but by giving Hunter an extra challenge, she worried that it made the contest uneven. Now, if she, by some great miracle, pulled it off and won, Hunter would say it was because he had tougher words. She wanted to be shelter scribe fair and square. What do you say? Kennedy asked. Deal. May the best shelter scribe win, Hunter said, holding his hand out for Letty to shake. Letty shook it. Tomorrow, bring your 5 words, Mario said. No backing down. With that, the 2 boys turned to leave. This is going to be like the Hulk versus an ant, Hunter said loudly to Mario as they walked away. Letty looked back at him. Their eyes met. She wanted him to know she heard him refer to her as an insect. Hunter suddenly stomped on the floor. Splat! Game over! The 2 boys laughed. Oh, before we go on to the next chapter, I just wanted to point out this word scribe. They keep saying shelter scribe. That's spelled S-C-R-I-B-E. And it's just another word for writer. It's kind of an old-fashioned word. You might know the word script from like a play script. It's related to that word. It just means to write out. So a scribe is a person who writes. Chapter 4 is called Adios, Spike. Brisa gathered Letty and Kennedy into a huddle. We need big words, chicas, she said. High school level words, for sure, Kennedy added, pulling her phone from her back pocket. I'll Google some, and I can ask my big brother. He'll know. Kennedy stopped and looked over at Letty, who was silent. Are you okay? Letty stood motionless as a rush of English words flooded her head. One word in particular stood out among them all. Doubt. Doubt was a word she knew well in English and Spanish. In Spanish, doubt was duda. Doubt had followed her all the way from Mexico to the United States. It was there on her first day of school when she couldn't understand a word the teacher said. It was there when some older boys sent her to the boys' bathroom instead of the girls' bathroom, and then laughed at her every time they saw her in the hallway. She never thought she'd learn English, let alone make any friends at school. Though she did both, doubt had never left her side. A loud commotion of barking and kids rushing to the door snapped Lety out of her daze. "Everyone, Spike is leaving," Alma announced, holding Spike in her arms. "Come and say goodbye." All of the kids gathered around Alma. Hunter leaned in to give Spike a quick kiss on his head. It was hard to stay mad at him when he could give Spike such a sweet kiss. As the group said their goodbyes and moved on, Lety approached with Brisa and Kennedy. "Let's make a little goodbye prayer for him. Lety, can you?" Brisa said. "Oliver, no. Oliver." He's being naughty. "That's a good idea. Spike needs all the prayers he can get," Alma said, and handed Spike to Lety. Lety gave Spike a gentle squeeze and closed her eyes. Brisa and Kennedy followed. "Dear St. Francis, you loved all of God's creatures," Lety began. "We ask you to please watch over Spike. He is a hero that saved a baby girl. Now he is going to a foster home, and we pray he will be safe, loved, and fed the best—" "Real carne," Brisa interrupted excitedly. "Yes, that he will have real steak," Lety added. "And please make sure he always has a toy to chew. Amen." "Amen," the three girls repeated. Lety gave Spike a kiss on his head. She wished so much he could be her dog. She wished so much that he was going home with her. "I can tell already that you're going to be an awesome shelter scribe," Alma said with a wink, before taking Spike from her and whisking him out of the room. After Alma's kind words and Spike being whisked away, the room swirled with chatter and activity. Brisa and Kennedy joined the other cat heroes. Hunter and Mario were reading the animal profiles posted on the bulletin board. Still, Lety stood frozen. Spike's departure had made the contest more urgent to her. Had she really agreed to be a shelter scribe and compete with Hunter Farmer, the fifth grader who read and wrote at a high school level? She thought back to her own words to Dr. Villalobos. Sometimes people or pets that are not wanted can still become heroes if we give them a chance. If Hunter thought he was going to splat her like an ant in this contest, she was going to prove him wrong. She owed it to the hero dog Spike and the hat-hating Finn and all of the furry friends needing a forever family to squash the doubt and write profiles that were pure gold. These are short little chapters, so we should be able to do a little bit more today. Well, the next one's a little bit longer, so this will probably be our last chapter for today. Chapter 5, 5 English words. When Brisa's mom dropped Lety off at her home, her 7-year-old brother Eddie was sitting on the front porch waiting for her. "Lety, Lety," he sang, rushing from the porch to unlatch the gate for her. "You missed the best day ever." "You played hangman, right?" "With chalk on the playground, and I knew all the words." "Smarty pants," Lety said, opening the screen door for her brother. The minute she walked in, she could smell the spicy aroma of lentil soup from the kitchen. "Mrs. Camacho let me help the new kids. There's Luis from Guatemala and Zinat from... I don't remember, but I got to be their buddies. We had paletas, and tomorrow we have to bring in pictures of our families. Will you help me find one?" "Sure," Lety said. She passed the dining table toward the kitchen to greet her mom, but stopped once she spotted a stack of paint swatches. It was her mom's tradition to bring her one swatch from every paint job, but this time there were at least a dozen stacked on the table. One each, the size of a bookmark, featured several shades of purple and pink. "Did you know there were so many purples, Lety?" Eddie asked, taking a seat at the table. Lety shuffled through them and shook her head. I did, Eddie said. I know all the colors already. Velvet violet, marvelous mauve, spring lavender. When Eddie rattled, while Eddie rattled off a list of purple paints, Letty's mom walked into the room with a pot of soup. She placed it on the table and gave Letty a hug. ¿Te gustan? She asked, lowering her eyes to the swatches Letty held in her hands. Sí, son hermosas, gracias, Letty said. Letty's mom had been an artist in Mexico who sold her paintings of birds, stray animals, and flowers in the main plaza of Tlaquepaque. Now she painted homes and apartments. Most people wanted their walls painted colors that her mom called sencillos, like beige, gray, and creamy whites. But she always picked up the most vibrant paint swatches for Letty. Letty and Eddie studied the colors and practiced pronouncing them every night. It always impressed Mrs. Camacho when Letty would describe colors not just as blue or green, but instead as indigo blue or moss green. In this way, Letty felt her English was improving, but she wasn't sure that knowing names for different paint colors would help her now as a shelter scribe. Knowing paint colors certainly didn't help her mom when they went to her first parent-teacher conference. Letty's mom and teacher sat across from each other and traded silent smiles for 10 minutes. It felt like forever to Letty, until a translator arrived. With Mrs. Camacho, things were a lot easier. She spoke Spanish, but she didn't speak Aziza or Ghazi's language. Last year, when Letty witnessed Mrs. Camacho struggling to communicate with Ghazi's parents about a permission slip needed for a field trip, Letty recognized the deep scarlet shade of embarrassment that flooded Ghazi's face. From that day forward, she always made sure Ghazi was never sent to the wrong bathroom or left to eat alone in the lunchroom. How go first day of camp? Letty's mom asked, making Eddie grin. You're speaking English, Eddie said. Letty's mom smiled back at him. I learn English too, she winked at him. I'm best student. Eddie shook his head, still cracking up. ¿Y? ¿Cómo te fue, Letty? She asked Letty again. Good. I volunteered to be a shelter scribe, Letty answered. Her mom winced, and Letty quickly translated for her. Me fue muy bien. Voy a escribir historias para las mascotas. Letty started before Eddie interrupted. Cool, Eddie exclaimed. Can we get a dog? I hope so. I met a sweet dog today that would be perfect for us. ¿Cómo se llama? Letty's mom asked. Spike. Letty's mom laughed. That's a cool name, Eddie said. Maybe we can bring him home? Letty asked her mom. Letty's mom shifted her head from left to right as if thinking it over. No sé, she answered. Hablaré con su papá. Gracias, mamita, Letty said, grateful that her mom was willing to talk to her father. It was a good sign that her mom liked the idea of having a dog. You have to say thank you, Letty, Eddie said. We won't learn English if we always speak Spanish. That's what Mrs. Camacho says. She also says we shouldn't lose our Spanish, Eddie, Letty said. That's important too. We don't have to choose one or the other. The goal is to be bilingual. Eddie shrugged. We already are, but I'm going to be more than bilingual. I will learn all the languages in the whole world, so Mom has to learn them too. English most of all. Aye, Eddie, Letty said, shaking her head. She's learning as fast as she can. I know, he said, and then got up and kissed his mom on the cheek. I know you're trying, mamita. Letty smiled at her brother and thought back to Eddie's choir performance last Christmas. After the event, parents and teachers mingled in the school cafeteria. As she and Eddie bounced around, chatting with their friends and teachers, her mom huddled close with Brisa's mom. Both of them were too shy to meet other parents with the little English they spoke. Maybe her brother was right. Deep down, Letty wanted what he wanted. She wanted her mom to be able to join conversations instead of standing in the back of the room, scared to speak and say the wrong thing. Letty understood how that felt. Later that night, when her father came home from work, Letty and Eddie kept him company at the dinner table. They made it a family practice to do their homework and drink a glass of milk while he ate his dinner. Lety flipped through an English dictionary to find words that would be at Hunter's high school reading level. Kennedy and Brisa had said they'd also help her come up with words. Lety hoped they were having more luck. Eddie browsed through a family photo album for a picture to take to his summer ELL class the next day. She looked over at her father as he cut a piece of pork on his plate and scooped it up with a corn tortilla. "Papa, do you know any hard English words?" she asked. "I need 5 words for tomorrow." He arched his eyebrows at her and wiped his mouth with a paper towel. Todas son difíciles para mí, mija, he said, and scooped up some pork. "If you find difficult words, write them down and practice them," Eddie said, dipping a chocolate chip cookie into his glass of milk. "That's what Mrs. Camacho says." Lety's father frowned. Her father rarely spoke English, but he understood everything. "I can study the difficult words with you, Papa. I will be the teacher, since I know English best," Eddie said. Lety laughed at her brother, but it was true. For Eddie, English came so easily. Mrs. Camacho said it was because Eddie started learning English at a younger age. She said young brains are like sponges, absorbing new languages easily. Lety wished she could make her brain a sponge, too. Their father leaned over and proudly patted Eddie's head. Lety's father had been the first to come to the United States. He came to work construction with an uncle who had started his own business years ago. Her father was gone for an entire year. Every day her father was gone, Lety worried. She yearned for his voice in the morning, singing a song from the radio, and his boots at the door before they went to sleep. During that year, her mom, Eddie, and Lety lived with their grandparents to save money for their trip to the United States. Eddie barely remembered anything from that time. He was too young. But Lety felt the emptiness of their dad's departure and the anxiety as they waited for the call to join him in a new country. When her dad and uncle had finally earned enough money to send for them, they filled their backpacks and left their home in Tlaquepaque for good. Lety's father stood up from the table to take his plate to the kitchen, but before he did, he leaned down and planted a kiss on Lety's head. "Tú estudias." He tapped a finger on her dictionary. "Yo trabajo." "Papa, you have to study too," Eddie said, "not just work all the time." Lety passed him a stern look to be quiet. "He works all day so that we can study," Lety explained. "Tiene razón," Lety's mother said in agreement. "After English, I'm going to learn Italian so I can surprise my soccer coach," Eddie chirped. "Then maybe Farsi or Tagalog. There are so many languages. Thousands. English is my favorite, though." "Qué bueno, mijo," Lety's mom said, pouring him more milk. "I can barely come up with 5 good English words," Lety said, staring down at the dictionary. Her mom put a hand on Lety's shoulder. "I do not know so many words," her mom said. "Lo siento, mija." "It's okay. Kennedy and Brisa are helping me." "Use one of these," Eddie said, sliding a paint swatch with 5 different shades of pink on it across the table toward her. "These are good." Lety closed the dictionary. She studied the paint swatch and slipped it into her book bag while Eddie moved into the living room to watch a cartoon called Zombie Cats. She joined him on the couch, but once their father came in and took his place on the corner of the couch, he switched the channel to a Spanish game show. Eddie groaned and dropped down to the floor with a sulk. Lety curled up next to her dad. The game show was called Cien Mexicanos Dicen. It was the Mexican version of Family Feud, where 2 families were pitted against each other to answer questions about everyday topics. Lety looked forward to the show because the host was funny and the families could win thousands of dollars. She liked to daydream that it was her family on the show, winning $50,000. The big prize wasn't the only reason she liked the show. It was her favorite show because of the way her father's stern mouth curved into a smile whenever the host made a joke. Tonight, The host asked the families to name something they never left home without. One by one, the contestants guessed wallet, cell phone, eyeglasses, purse, and a variety of wrong answers. Identificación, her father guessed. ID, Eddie repeated. Hearing her tired father come alive after a long day of work comforted Lety. Her mom joined them on the couch and patted Lety's leg. Papeles. Lety's mom shouted at the television as soon as she sat down. Lety looked down at her mother's chipped fingernails covered with splotches of cream-colored paint. And even though her mom usually wore a bandana over her hair when she painted homes, Lety could see flecks of ivory white on a few strands of her mom's brown hair. Her father had showered and changed into clean clothes as soon as he arrived home, but Lety could still smell the earthy aroma of a new construction project soaked into his dark hair and golden brown skin. Identification, Lety yelled out. Why aren't they guessing that? A shrill buzzard rang out on the show, signaling that the family had struck out. Now the other family had the chance to guess the remaining answer. They huddled close before shouting the winning answer. Driver's license / identification. Lety's dad smiled wide. Lo sabía. That family should have listened to us, Lety, Eddie said. We knew the answer. We knew the answer in 2 languages, Lety said. We would have won the big prize. That is the end of that chapter. And our next chapter, starting, on Monday, because today's Friday, will be chapter 6, and it's called Fair and Square. We have read 44 pages of this book so far in just 2 sittings. So, good for us. Have a good weekend, everybody. I'll see you next time.